welcome to this Talk About It live session. I have a very, very special guest joining me here this evening. I have the beautiful and talented and intelligent and charismatic Delisa Hamilton.
Hey,
And
everybody.
just to tell you a little bit about Delisa, she is a leadership and career development training expert, and she is a nationally board certified counselor and a certified instructor with 40 years of federal government service underneath her belt. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology, as well as a master's degree in career and community counseling. And here's the kicker, and here's why she's here today. She is the author of the upcoming book, and you better get this title because it is everything. She is author of the upcoming book, The Power of Kind, Transforming Our World with Everyday Acts of Kindness. Delisa, welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Stephanie. Thank you so much. I appreciate that wonderful, wonderful welcome. That was beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of beautiful things here this evening because the subject is the power of kind, to borrow from the title of your book. And as we'll discuss, there is power in kindness. When we think of power, so often we think of those hard and rough, bravery and courage and strength and valor. And a lot of times we don't think about kindness, in the same framework as power. But we're going to talk about that tonight. And we're going to start off by talking about there are a lot of misconceptions around what kindness is. And I have so many questions for you on this. Let's start off on what is kindness? Is it just simply just being nice, just being a nice person?
Right. Well, I thank you so much for that question. When I thought about this topic in the book, one of the first things I did was, research what kindness is all about. And kindness has multiple definitions. You probably are all familiar with the definition of just simply being nice. But it goes beyond that. When we think about kindness and being kind, we're also talking about compassion. We're also talking about decency, respect. We're talking about the art and the idea of being empathetic. And sometimes kindness shows up in everyday acts of just being mindful of what someone else's situation is. So when you can put yourself in someone else's shoes and ultimately say, I understand where you are coming from, that is showing a level of kindness because you're ultimately saying that I care.
Yes.
I care enough about you to be able to say, I'm going to choose to be kind to you. I'm going to choose to respect and accept you for who you are. When we also talk about the word kind, it also has definitions that also are related to commonality. When you hear someone say, that person is the kind of person that XYZ, usually that means that that's something that's a characteristic. It's something common. It's something that you share. When we think about mankind, it's everyone, that we all have things in common. So when I think about kind and the power of kind, I'm actually asking people to be thinking also about what it is we have in common and not what we have that is different about each other. That we appeal to that level of commonality with each other.
And when you ask people, I'm sorry, Delisa, when you ask people to do that, to look at the commonality, do you do that because you feel that it makes it easier to exhibit kindness when you look at what we have in common when you can see yourself in the other individual.
You got it. Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's almost like putting a mirror up to yourself and saying, if I were actually getting ready to have an interaction with myself, how would I want to be treated? So putting that mirror up to yourself and saying, you know what? Ultimately, I would want to be treated this way. Therefore, this individual who's out here, who has at least the common bond and connection to me, which is we're both human beings, we deserve that same level of respect that I would want anybody else out here to give me. So absolutely, it makes it easier when we can find what it is that we have similar. And instead of looking at all of those multitude of things that we have that are not the same, race, our complexions, the fact that we're a different gender, nationality. There's so many reasons why we can find that we're different, but we really should be trying to look at how we're the same.
Very interesting. So tell me, what do you think about people who maybe suffer from a sense of self-love? They don't have self-esteem. They don't hold themselves in high regard.
Oh my gosh.
Is it challenging for those individuals to exhibit kindness? You heard the saying, hurt people, right?
Did you read my notes today, Stephanie?
I can't wait to read the book. I can't wait.
You hit it right on the nose. It really does come down to what our foundation is, where we come from in terms of who's loved us, how were we loved, how did we get initiated to even the idea of kindness, or for those of us who may never have had acts of kindness, it becomes increasingly more challenging for you to be able to exhibit it. So it really comes down to our origins of love, our origins of, caring. As infants, we don't come out of the womb having hatred for each other. We just don't. We don't even understand what that means. And so ultimately, it's an instinctive thing for us to want to be cared for, to look for the warmth of our mother's arms and hands around us, comforting us, swaddling us, feeding us. When children are not given that opportunity, there are studies that show that those children become increasingly more angry. They become reclusive. They don't want to be around other people because they don't understand what that really means. And so it becomes even more challenging when a child has not been able to experience self-love at a childlike state, but then as they grow to be adults, that they still are not able to experience that level of unconditional self-love, not only from it being provided from someone else, because sometimes we need to feel love from someone else in order for us to really understand what love is and for us to even be, receptive of love. But self-love is at the core of kindness. It really is. And it all starts with each one of us.
Interesting. Hearing you say it goes back to what we've been exposed to as infants. And that was one of my questions. Where does this begin, this journey to kindness? Where does it start? Because quite frankly, we probably can all think back to childhood and that bullying class. And it's like, how can you be in first or second grade? We're 6 and 7 years old.
Right.
And, there's that kid who's just unkind. And you're like, but we're so young. Where does that start? Was one question that's often come to my mind. Where does that start? And is kindness something that is innate? And you kind of answered that. We come into this world. Hi there. We come into this world.
Well, what I need you. Well,
Thank you.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
Do
Go ahead.
we have a co-guest?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. Thank you.
Hi
That's
there.
okay. I'm
Hey,
going to
look.
have to exhibit some kindness right here, right?
No, it's all good. I mean,
Thanks,
hey,
everybody.
we have families. This is live. This is real. This is real life, everybody. So
Well,
you're
you know,
getting the real deal.
you try your best, and sometimes it doesn't always work out. But no, go ahead, Stephanie. I was really following what you were saying, just in terms of the idea of like, where does it all start?
Where does it start? And
Yeah.
and what causes someone so young to be so unkind? And you kind of answer that question. It all comes back to, our upbringing and what we've been exposed to, and
Right.
those things help us become either compassionate people or not.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about it, we learn a lot from our parents, and sometimes our parents have been raised in situations. Some of us are old school. We've got parents who were raised in the 20s and 30s, and, spare the rod, and,
Spoil the child.
spoil the child. And so many people were brought up in a family dynamic where in some ways their parents, and it has nothing to do with necessarily that whether they love them or not. It has a lot to do with their fear of them turning into something that they did not want them to turn into. So they felt like, I've got to, be stern, or I've got to be firm on them in order for them to do the work that we need them to do, which is get out of school and become a citizen and become an adult.
Stay on the straight and narrow, not get in trouble.
And stay on the straight and narrow. We get to a place sometimes where we don't recognize the value of being kind and the value of being caring in our nurturing of one another. And so even as young children that grow into parents who may not have had that unconditional love, they sometimes then breed children who don't love themselves. And if you don't love yourself, it's very difficult for you to be in a state of love and caring and kindness for those around you. I mean, just imagine if you're in an environment 24/7 where there's nothing but negativity, there's danger, there's fear, there's a lack of trust.
Yeah.
All of those things can contribute to a child becoming, like what you said, the bully in the playground, who then changes and turns into the bully at the workplace, who then could also be the bully in their community.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily always have to turn out that way. We can reverse this and change the cycle by actually making sure that we take care of ourselves emotionally and physically. And I'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. Well, you talked up my son. I see he's joined, and he's truly one of the kindest people I know.
Oh,
Love feeling. I know
it.
I'm just saying it because, but truly
I'm
a kind individual. I mean, one of the things I've always marveled at is how someone can be subjected to just maybe bullying or being treated in an unkind way, but yet they have the ability to be loving and kind and compassionate, even in the face of, or even in spite of. Speak to that.
My gosh, I really love that you brought that up. In the book, there's a chapter on triumph over tragedy. And we talk about those individuals who have come through extreme levels of tragedy, people who have lost limbs in the war, or people who have gone through atrocities in their lives, who are able to come out of it on the other side. And a lot of it has to do with your inner will. A lot of it has to do with a faith foundation.
Mm.
And a lot of it has to do with your ability to forgive. And so we talk a lot about forgiveness in this book because it's so key to you being able to move past whatever tragedies, whatever, forms of hatred, forms of acts of violence or treatment that could ultimately impact your ability to continue to pass it on in terms of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
This level of being able to actually recognize that forgiveness is the key. Forgiveness is the key to being able to move forward in your life and to
Can
live
you
a
talk a
happy.
little bit more? I'm sorry, Delisa, about forgiveness. But I have to tell you, I know so many people are challenged by that. I mean, and we hear it a lot, forgive, forgive, forgive. But some may say, sounds good, but easier said than done. This person has hurt me and hurt me deeply. And I'm kind of entitled to be pissed off about that. How do you counsel those people to a point of really forgiving? I mean, fully reaching that point of forgiveness? Because I know that's something a lot of people are challenged by.
Well, I think the number one thing that we've all heard and it comes up all the time, but I don't think we always recognize it, that forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to recognize that, people are afraid of forgiveness because they feel like, I don't want to forgive that person because I don't want to forget what they did. I don't want to ever, have to feel that way again, but I don't want to forgive them because they hurt me. But ultimately, when you forgive that person, you're allowing yourself to heal. You're allowing yourself and you're giving yourself the ability to say it's okay to move on from that hurt feeling. Because ultimately, you're only hurting yourself more if you continue to harbor those negative feelings, that anger, that sense of, in lack of empowerment. You empower yourself when you're able to say, you know what? I'm strong enough to say, it's okay. You did that, and maybe it was for whatever reason it was. I had no control over it.
Right.
And so, but I do have control over this.
You have so many people out here agreeing with you. They're saying, yes, forgiveness is for you. It does heal the hurt. And so, a lot of people, what you're saying right now, Delisa, is resonating with so many people. And that by not forgiving, that's toxic.
Absolutely. I see that there. And hi there. Love you. I just want to shout out to everybody out there who has been in that space where they are not able to forgive. It is a process. It sometimes takes time. I say don't beat yourself up if you're not able to do it right now. You have to get to a place of love for yourself, because ultimately knowing that if I forgive that individual or that situation or whatever it was, if I forgive and I recognize that that now releases me to be able to focus on my healing, to focus on providing myself with everything that I need emotionally to be able to move forward. I can now let that go. And it's behind me. And forgiveness is also powerful. The power that you get from being able to say, you know what, I'm giving you a gift, my gift of forgiveness.
Mhm.
really is a gift for yourself.
It
And I
is.
think we all have to think about it from that perspective. It will be the key to you then recognizing how easy it will be to be in a constant state of kindness, a
Yeah.
constant state of, compassion, and a constant state of empathy for others, because you've been there, done
Yeah.
that, and you can move on because you were able to forgive someone for whatever they did.
Mhm. That's so helpful, Delisa. And you feel so much better. And you know when you've come to that place because
Yeah.
you don't feel that heaviness inside. You
Oh, yeah.
are free. You have freed yourself. And like
Mhm.
you said, you can spend that energy on
Right.
something that's so much more life-giving to yourself and to others.
Yeah.
And in it, I think too, it's one of the ultimate demonstrations of self empowerment, like you said, when you don't allow others and their toxicity and their acts of unkindness affect you,
Yeah.
and you empower yourself to still be happy and to be free and to be light and giving. And as you said, compassionate. Isn't that the ultimate sense of power when you
Absolutely.
have mastered that and say that that doesn't affect me?
Absolutely.
You can
And it
genuinely
isn't
do
it
that.
isn't just, it's not like saying, oh, you know what? It's not a Scarlett O'Hara moment. Well, I won't think about it. Tomorrow is another day. It's not
Mhm,
about that. Forgiveness is intentional. So that
mhm,
means you do have to do the work. You
mhm.
will have to process your feelings around it. You will
Yes.
have to do some difficult, challenging things. But at the
Mhm,
end of the day, at the end of that tunnel is that light of being able to say, I did the work to be able to get the healing that I needed. And
mhm.
ultimately, that is an act of kindness on yourself.
Mhm.
Exhibiting an act of kindness sometimes isn't always about other people. It's about us being kind to ourselves because
Yeah.
we have a tendency to be hard on ourselves. We have a
Mhm,
tendency to hold things in, and we
mhm,
don't necessarily always take that time to really do the work to purge and to
mhm.
get rid of those negative feelings that will
Yeah.
give us an opportunity to
Mhm.
truly be in a state of kindness. And a
Yes.
state of kindness ultimately is a choice, but it's
Mhm.
ultimately a state where I think we all need to be really wanting and desiring to achieve,
Mhm.
because our purpose on this earth is to exist with each other harmoniously.
Yes.
There's nothing in the Bible that says, or any document written that
Mhm.
says we should be in this world, on this planet together, in a state of turmoil
Mhm.
and toxicity.
Right.
It, our purpose was for us to multiply and to
Mhm.
make the world better. And
Yes.
so the only way to do that is for us to be thinking, how can I do that on a daily basis?
Mhm. You
And to
speak of a.
me, yeah, go
Mhm.
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is so good. You just have my wheels turning. And thank you for your comments. People are saying this is a great session. This is so therapeutic. We're so very happy to hear that. And Althea has joined us. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you so, so much for joining us, Althea, and everyone else. And tell me this, Delisa, you talk about a state of kindness. And to me, that suggests something that is perpetual,
yeah.
something that is ongoing and kind of unyielding. So, are you saying that kindness is something that we should exercise at all times with everyone, no matter the circumstances?
Well, Stephanie, I love this question because I know there are people out there who think that, hey, there are people who don't deserve my kindness every day, and there are situations that come about that are just not, worthy of me thinking about being kind.
Mm-hmm.
And we all experience them. I mean, you look at the news every day and you're thinking, really, can I really be in a state of kindness
Mm-hmm.
when I'm seeing all of this horrific stuff happening out here
Mm-hmm.
in our world?
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about the state of kindness that I'm talking about, it is having a purpose
Mm-hmm.
and an objective that ultimately is to seek kind results.
Mm-hmm.
Being kind, if I can enter into any interaction with the ultimate goal and purpose of being kind,
Mm-hmm.
you may not have control over how it all ends up,
Mm-hmm.
but your purpose and your intent was for good. Your
Right.
purpose and intent was to be able to have common ground and to be compassionate and to understand where this other individual is coming from, not to go in with an angry attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we're frustrated, when we're depressed, when we're fearful, we act aggressively. We act defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm asking about, what I'm asking people to do is to consciously begin the process of trying to put themselves in a state of kindness in their everyday interactions. And it really does come to a state of kindness because you have to be intentional. I mentioned it earlier.
Right.
It's not going to happen, just on a whim. You
Mm-hmm.
almost have to take steps on a daily basis to say, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Was I being kind when I said what I said?
Mm-hmm.
Did I, asking yourselves, affirming whether or not, hey, is this kindness? How am I showing up?
Right.
It really does take a level of self-awareness and a
Yes.
measure of, being able to say, this individual or these people that I'm dealing with are human beings just like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so my state of mind has to always be, I want them to see me as someone who is not a foe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a friend. I'm somebody who is here to be a, a person of, compassion, of caring, of love.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could all be thinking like this on a regular basis, it really gets me to a point of wondering, where would our world be right
Right.
now if
Right.
each one of us was saying, you know what, my goal and purpose today is to be kind. My
Right.
goal and purpose today is to be decent, respectful, loving, caring.
Yeah. Yes.
Simply asking ourselves, how hard would it be for me
Mm-hmm.
to, make that choice?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be angry,
Mm-hmm.
and to work through whatever anger and defensiveness and fear and whatever else we're working with, to get through that, to be able to say, I choose to be kind. I choose
I
to be
choose it.
respectful. But
Mm-hmm.
in some cases, Stephanie, it's easier said than done.
Yes.
And some of us may need more help than
Mm-hmm.
others. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we have baggage. We
Right.
might need to have someone help us through and talk through whatever it is that blocks our ability to be in a state of mind that is harboring on kindness.
Yeah, but you're right. You have to be, it does take a level of self-awareness, and it does take intentionality. And let's face it, real talk, we have all at times fallen short. I know for me, I have a conscience that just whips me to no end if I'm not at my best. And I'm
Right.
real with myself. I'm like, now, Stephanie, now you know you could have and you should have done better. And you just be real with yourself. And when you have that opportunity to do better, you know, you do so. Someone asked for the title of your book.
Oh, absolutely.
Again,
Yeah.
Delisa's upcoming book is The Power of Kind, Transforming Our World with Everyday Acts of Kindness. Boy, I just love the title of that soon-to-be best-selling book by Delisa Hamilton. But, you know, kindness, are there misconceptions
Mm.
around kindness? You know, you hear these terms like nice guys finish last, or you know, things of that nature. Are there any misconceptions that we should be aware of, and how do you demystify that for us?
Well, I think there's definitely a myth around people that are kind are weak or vulnerable, or, their intentions may not always be, sincere.
Mhm.
And, I've actually been called a Pollyanna, because I had made, you know, all intentions of and made it my business to try to be kind in my daily interactions. And there are people who just don't respond positively to that, because they're on the defense. They're always looking to maybe knock down, or even find a crack in
Mhm.
that perfect, veneer. And so they're looking to say, you can't be that perfect.
Mhm.
And it isn't even about being perfect. It's
Right.
about being human.
Mhm.
It's about really looking at what's at the core of our humanity. The
Mhm.
core of our humanity is that we care for one another. And
Yes.
so I think that the myth around being kind is sometimes that, people who are kind are weak. I think that it's the exact opposite. That
Right.
people who are kind have a power and a strength that goes far beyond anything that somebody who is mean on an intentional and daily basis
Mhm.
goes through. Unfortunately, I feel that people who have that tendency to be mean or angry or, mad at the world,
Mhm.
they are struggling through a
Yes.
number of things that have probably stemmed from way far back in their past. And
Mhm.
so we have to do the work. We
Right.
have to be able to step into a situation where we're saying, I want to choose to be kind, because at the end of all of this, and I always talk about my dad, so forgive me if I go on a rant.
No,
But
that's great.
dad taught me and my siblings about just the power of being kind and respectful. And he used to always tell me to shower them with kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And these are so simple,
Yeah.
but at the core of all of our beings, I think it sounds like it's simple, but yet it isn't, because I really do believe life gets hard, and we think that we have to be sometimes something that we're not. We have to be
Mm-hmm.
strong. We have to be hard. We have to be, aggressive and assertive. And there's nothing wrong with being any of those things. You
Right.
can still be kind. You
Mm-hmm.
can still be compassionate and strong. You can still be loving and caring
Mm-hmm.
and assertive. So, you don't have to give up one in order to exhibit the other. You know, I think that there's a balance when it comes to being who we are and loving ourselves and truly understanding who we are.
Mm-hmm.
But the acts of kindness that I'm talking about are just those simple things that we take for granted, you know,
Such
with,
as,
such as, you know, just telling somebody they look nice,
mhm,
or being just a good friend, someone who someone can confide in, and giving people that space where they can share their deepest emotions and feelings, and having and showing compassion for them in those moments. You
mhm,
know, not being critical of someone when they're down,
right,
and you know, calling people names that we know are not going to help them build their self-esteem. You know, it starts from at the very earliest moments of our lives, someone just having that unconditional love for us just because we're in existence. You know,
right.
to me, those are those everyday acts of kindness, you know, bringing someone their lunch while they're working, you
Mhm,
know, 9, 10 hours a day, you know,
mhm,
asking someone if they need anything. You
right.
know, it sounds like it's oversimplifying the
Mhm,
whole idea of the power of kind, but
mhm.
everyday acts of kindness build into a lifetime of kindness.
Does it take
You
a
don't.
measure of awareness? Because there's someone here on our session, and I won't give their name. You know who you are, but we were someplace, and she saw me, and normally I try to be anyway pleasant,
Mhm.
and she and at first I don't think she really saw me. You know, she saw me at a distance, and then she really saw me, and she saw that I was in distress, and we were in
Mm.
a public place, and I really don't like showing my emotions publicly, you know, when I'm
Mhm.
around people. And she said, at first she said, are you, and she said, oh no, you're not okay.
Mm.
And she pulled me aside, went in a conference room, and I was just able to just let it out.
Oh my God.
And she was on her way to take care of business, but
Mhm.
she sat and she prayed with me, you
Yes.
know. And I just felt like from that point I could move on
Oh yeah.
from, you know. So I think it's like you said, it's that empathy, it's
Hmm.
that connection, that sense of connection with people, and
Yes.
just being aware. You know, she could have seen me and gotten in the elevator and gone on about her business and just kind of threw up her
Hmm.
hand, hi, bye. But,
Hmm.
you know, really caring and being aware and seeing, just really seeing people.
Yeah.
And, you know, that means everything. I will never, ever, ever forget that. And I think
It
that's the
made an
thing about
indelible mark.
kindness. Hmm?
Hmm.
Was that?
It made an indelible mark on you, and it will
Absolutely.
always be something that you remember. And that's
Yes.
why it's so important that kindness is something that we choose to give one another, because we never know what that impact can be on
Hmm.
someone else. That
Hmm.
simple act of her saying to you, "You're not okay."
Hmm. Hmm.
She saw you.
She
She
did.
saw you in that moment. She
Hmm.
connected with you.
Hmm.
And that is at the core of our humanity, to be able to say, "You're a person just like me. If I was hurting, I would want somebody to say something to me that would help me get out of this, or help me
Yeah.
be able to talk this through." You know, compassion and kindness are interwoven and interconnected. You
Hmm.
know, I talked to you earlier about that being part of the definition. We have to be able to provide that level of compassion and caring in order to be able to be kind to each other. And I just think that it's such a powerful story that you shared, because it really does speak to someone's individual will to be able to say, "I'm not going to continue with what I intended to do. I'm
Hmm.
going to change the course of what I want to do to now help this person. And ultimately, I think that's our purpose. Our purpose is
I,
to help each other. Our
I
purpose
believe
is
that.
for us to be here for each other. You know,
Mhm.
we don't make it in this world without other people. We,
Absolutely.
it wasn't intended for us to be alone. And so
Mhm.
the more that we can express kindness, the
Mhm.
more that we can express compassion, I think the more we're truly exhibiting what our Creator asked of us, to
Yes.
love each other and to be there
Absolutely.
for each other.
You know, you spoke earlier, Delisa, of just kind of common acts of kindness that I think most of us who are kind express. But is there a level of individuality that, you know, kindness may show up in me or from me differently than from you because we're different individuals? Is there a level of authenticity and individuality when it comes to kindness?
Absolutely. I think, you know, you've heard that phrase, you know, our love language. You
Mm-hmm.
know, everybody has a different love language, a different language of kindness because
Mm-hmm.
we are different. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you do for someone else might be somebody else might do differently. The
Mm-hmm.
way we express kindness is different. But I think what we have to remember is, what is the end result? It doesn't ultimately matter necessarily how we got there, but what was our intention and what was the impact and the result? At the end of whatever you did and how you expressed it, did you get the result of someone feeling good about themselves? Or that they felt like, wow, this person was really kind to me. They showed compassion. That was so thoughtful of them. They didn't have to do that, you know? So we have to be mindful of the fact that none of us are going to do it exactly the same way. There's absolutely individuality in all aspects of kindness and compassion because we are all different. But that end result is what you want to be focused on. I want to make sure that whatever I did made that situation better and not worse.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately my purpose and my goal is to lift up an individual and to put them in a space where that kind act makes them feel better than they were feeling before.
It's interesting you said focusing on the end result. Have you ever encountered this where you're focused on the end result, you do what you consider to be an act of kindness, and the intended recipient just doesn't get it at all? And it's like, wait a minute, what happened here? Where's the
Yeah.
disconnect? I was being kind. Is there ever a time, you know, have you experienced it? And is that common where kindness is kind of misinterpreted? And if so, what do you do in those instances?
Absolutely. I think everybody on the line could probably come up with multiple examples where they thought that their intentions would be received a certain way. They
Mhm.
thought that, hey, I was trying to be nice, I was trying to be kind, you
Mhm.
know. And absolutely, we all have had those situations where somebody took our kindness for something other than what it really was.
Mhm.
And I say to that, it's okay
Mhm.
because you know your heart,
Mhm.
you know your intentions, but I do always caution that we have to be mindful that everything that we do that we think is kind may not be kind to someone else.
Mhm.
And so maybe thinking about ways to be kind that resonate with other people
Mhm.
instead of, well, I think it's kind, but to be looking at, okay, but what is their definition of kind? Or
Mhm.
what would resonate with them?
Mhm.
Like, I'll give you an example. I love roses on really any type of special event or milestone.
Mhm.
And so for me, that's an act of kindness, you
Right.
know. My husband, on the other hand, of course, thinks that, giving flowers is not, he thinks it's ridiculous. He's like, you're putting money into someone else's pocket. What, then they're going to die in another couple of days. So it's so frivolous. And,
Mhm.
wouldn't you rather something more, permanent?
Permanent.
And I
Mhm.
told him, but for me, that really shows kindness because you thought about me. You thought
Mhm.
about what I wanted.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so every, event, every birthday, every anniversary, I get the beautiful roses. And for
Mhm.
me, that's such a powerful expression of his kindness and his love for me because
Mhm.
it goes against something that he would necessarily want to do.
Right.
But those are the type of things that sometimes kindness calls us to do is step outside of our comfort zone, step outside of what we might feel is kind or what we might necessarily want to do for other people.
Mhm.
So kind of going back to what you said, it there are varying degrees of kindness, but if we think about what would this person want, you know, um, and even, what would make them feel like this was special.
Mhm.
I just feel like it's so important for us to sometimes take ourselves out of our day-to-day, you know, sense of self,
Mhm.
because I think kindness sometimes requires us to step outside of ourselves
Right.
and acknowledge that there's someone else who might need you.
Right.
There's someone else who might need to feel that love and that caring and your compassion, and to not always be thinking about ourselves. Sometimes it's even therapeutic for us to not always think about ourselves and
Yes.
to be able to step outside of that and say, what do they need?
Right. I think that goes back to what you said earlier, Delisa, the intentionality. You know,
Mm-hmm.
intending to be kind, but also exhibiting intentionality by intentionally knowing what the person's desires and
Right.
motivations and things are. So when you are demonstrating an act of kindness toward that person, you're being very intentional and directing it to that individual. I think that is I think that's the best way to go when you
Right.
can exhibit that. And it's so funny one time and I've been raised to appreciate when someone gives you a gift, just appreciate the
Right.
gesture.
Right.
But one time we had a Christmas celebration. We had a gift exchange. And person was just kind of randomly giving out gifts and my mom and I received a gift, and they were slippers that were, very glittery, very festive, and probably about 3 sizes too small.
Oh,
And so, it's like, okay, the slippers are nice, but, we won't be able to wear them. So, at least being a little intentional about, maybe I need to find out maybe what size they wear and things like that. But some people just think, well, it's the thought that counts. What do you think about kindness? And you gave your example with your husband and the flowers.
right.
But what do you think? What advice do you have around kindness and gift giving? But I want to make sure we get this other question.
Yeah.
How do we combat triggers which may cause us to react defensively? Let's get to that person's question
That's an
first.
excellent
How do
question.
we combat triggers?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it all comes down to, like we talked about earlier, what's our foundation? Where are we coming from? What space are we coming from? What are the things that, like you say, Dee, that maybe triggered us to be defensive or, maybe not trust individuals, because, oh, I've seen this pattern before. They want something. Um, but I think what we have to do is not necessarily focus on what the individual's intentions are, because ultimately we could go down a list of things to try to say, well, this person is clearly not sincere, you know. I once again, when you have to be in a space of acceptance when it comes to kindness. Kindness is two ways, right? So I mean, you can give it and you can also receive it. And I think that, you know, we have to start allowing ourselves an opportunity to not be defensive, to start learning how to be less, you know, vulnerable to being so mistrusting, and start saying it's okay. It's okay to have someone do nice things for me. It's okay to accept that somebody might just love me enough to be kind, or like me enough to want to honor me that way. Because I think sometimes we put our guard up because we're fearful. We're not sure of where people are coming from. And we don't necessarily want to accept sometimes that we're worthy of kindness, or that, it's okay for somebody to be nice to me. So I think when it comes to defensiveness and the triggers that sometimes that will get us to a place of, not trusting individuals who are nice to us, is we need to accept that we're worthy, and that it's okay for people to honor us with whatever it is that they want to honor us with. And even if it does get to a point where they want something else, right? Because we all know that happens. People can show acts of kindness with ultimatums. People can show acts of kindness with contingency,
Ulterior
right?
motives.
And ulterior motives. So of course it's natural for us to be defensive because we know what is coming. And I think in the end, you want to at least first accept the kindness, but also be and acknowledge and recognize when the other end of that is, but I want something else. Still be grateful, still be in a state of accepting, but speak your truth and say, hey, I am so thankful. I'm so grateful for what you did for me. And I just want to really stay in that space and really be able to accept your kindness in a way that is not clouded with anything else.
Right.
And I just want to be able to kind of mellow and accept that without anything being attached to it,
What are
And
some of the risks, though, Delisa, of not being kind? You asked the question earlier, where in the world would we be if we all were intentional throughout our days and we were in a state of kindness? What are some of the risks to us as individuals, to families, and so on by not being kind?
Well, I'll start off with kind of a global state of, what are the risks? Because I think when I started this book, I really looked at it first from the lens of, why can't we just get along? This started way back in the 1990s when I first saw Rodney King get beat in the streets by police officers. And here we are 20 plus years later, and we're still seeing very similar types of acts of violence against African Americans, men, uh, people of all different nationalities, sexual orientations. There's so many things that we're seeing, and things haven't changed much. And so the risk of people not taking responsibilities individually for how we might be able to shift our behaviors to being more kind, to being more compassionate, I really feel on a global level that it could really have some major negative impacts on our society.
Mhm.
We ultimately could see demise of our of humanity in some ways where we are now constantly bearing arms against each other or defending ourselves against each other or having this sense of fear that somebody is going to do harm to us.
Mhm.
But if we started to believe that we had the power individually to change the world by what we did, you could almost see a world that might be moving in the right direction. And so it really is a movement, and it's an appeal to humanity that we start thinking about ourselves as being powerful enough to change our world with acts of kindness, one day at a time. Ultimately, individually, I think we also have a responsibility to ourselves, because if we aren't being kind, we're being the opposite, which is mean, angry, negative, nasty. And all of those things have a bearing on our individual health and wellness. And so not only would we be in a world where God knows where we'll be in another couple of years, but individually, it has a strong impact on our health emotionally and physically. And so it's really an appeal to each of us to be thinking about how we can make an everyday impact on our own happiness, on our own wellness, by choosing to be kind and choosing to be compassionate and caring to one another.
One of the most historic acts of kindness that you can think of, what's an example that stands out to you?
Gosh, I thought about this question, and it's really very, very hard for me because, I think about, the Civil Rights Act and, the things that have happened to change the trajectory of our world, and our society, that have had indelible marks, long lasting marks on just our ability to thrive and survive. And I think of those things and I say, were those acts of kindness or were those acts of desperation and need because we were in a state of duress,
Yeah.
And so, the acts of kindness that I feel are even more important than those historical ones are the ones that family members give on a daily basis to each other, and is that the act of, just acceptance, the acceptance of who we are, who we become, the acceptance of what we decide in terms of where we want to go in our lives. I think that there's even more value to those everyday acts of acceptance because they are the building blocks of a decent human being. So the parents who love their child with unconditional love is that parent who is building and developing an adult who will go out into that world and maybe do something really powerful to help mankind. So I feel like from those early stages of our existence that those acts are even more powerful and more important than these historical acts that have possibly had economic value or some other connection to why politically they had to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like there's no better gift that, to a child than the love of a parent unconditionally, that then allows that child to then become a thriving, successful, loving, caring, kind individual.
Delisa, that's so powerful. And I think we're going to have to end it on that note. I can't believe it's been an hour of just a powerful, powerful conversation. I've seen a comment saying we need a part two. So we might be at this again, but it tells you just how significant this topic is and how it resonates so deeply with people. Again, we're going to give you more information as the book gets closer to publication date. We're going to let you know when it's out and available, when you can purchase it. But keep the title in your mind: The Power of Kind, Transforming Our World with Everyday Acts of Kindness. Delisa, thank you for giving us information that we can go out and be intentional about how we show up in the world and how we can exhibit kindness on a day-to-day basis. Everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for joining us this evening on this all-important discussion. And let's be kind. It was so kind of you, Delisa, to join me this evening. And
Well,
so
thank you
kind
for
of
inviting me. And I was really happy to be here. And thank you all for the comments. It was really great to hear and read your comments. And just be intentional with your kindness. You have the power within you. And that's what I think is so important, that we know we have that ability to do it. It's one day at a time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Everyone, also tune in to the episode of Talk About It, episode 2 of Talk About It. Go to our YouTube channel and you will see our next episode that is on the art of conversation. It is not a lost art just yet, everyone, but tune into that to learn how important effective conversation is. Again, thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, Delisa. Bye, everyone. Take care. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our Talk About It YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Also, check us out on our social media. Hope to see you next time.